guys, I'm here to record a quick video about making the column graphs with the Rock Pocket Mouse data. So let me share my screen so you can see my Excel workbook, and then we'll go through it real quick. So first of all, when you look at the images in the lab, you're going to record the data in this first tab, the mice population data from the images. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 images representing different moments in time, and they're not ordered chronologically. And so in each location, A and B, you're going to record the number of light colored mice and dark colored mice that you see. And then there's also a space for you to record the general color of the substrate. So hopefully you'll notice that the A area, location A, remains that light sandy colored substrate throughout the entire series of images, whereas the images that are labeled B start out in time, and the first image, and there's one image where they're light, and then after that, they're all dark. So there's a little clue when you have to order them chronologically. It probably started out light. That's the dominant substrate in the environment, as you should have learned from watching the video. And then D, the dark lava flow, was something that was kind of a special feature that entered into the landscape. And after that lava flow, all the subsequent location B images show a dark color. So you can record and keep track in your mind that A is the light colored area, B is the darker colored area. And then you're going to take your data. Then you're going to think about it. You're going to organize it into, how do you think these populations changed through time as substrate B became dark? How did that influence the increase or decrease of light and dark colored mice populations? Did we see similar changes in light and dark mouse colorations in location A, which remained on that light substrate? Okay, so that's all the thinking that you're going to do over here in tab or sheet 1. Then you're going to move over to tab or sheet 2, and you're going to re-enter or copy and paste the data into chronological order. Okay, so I have done that here. I've looked at the images. I've taken this data, I've recorded the population data, and I've put it in the order that I think is appropriate for the light colored mice in location A on the light substrate, the dark colored mice in location A that remains light colored substrate, the light colored mice in location B that starts out in time 1 and then changes to dark substrate. Think how the population has changed. And then similarly, location B, dark coloration mice, how their number in the population has changed. So now I have all my data, and I'm going to make a graph with it so I can visually see how the mice populations have changed over time, and I can share that with others. So hopefully you'll remember that when you're making a graph, the first thing that you need to do is go up to Insert. And in this case, we're going to make a bar graph. And in Excel, that's actually called a column graph. Bar graphs are kind of oriented the other way, like horizontal lines. So if I go into the charts area in the middle, once I've clicked on insert, in the middle, there should be charts option. And then I'm going to go up here to this column option. And I'm going to select this kind of first option for the columns where different series can be stacked side by side. So I'll select that one. And then remember, if you don't have any data highlighted, your graph should come up blank. If it doesn't come up blank, then assume that Excel made the wrong guess about what you're trying to graph, and go in right away and delete it so that you can make sure you have the right things in there in the right order. The way that you do that, hopefully you remember, is right click on the graph, go to select data, and then if there's anything in here, you can click on it, and then you can choose to remove it. Okay, but if you don't have anything, or once you've done that, you can right click on the graph and go to that same option, select data. And now we're going to choose the data that we want to show. So what we're interested in showing is changes from time 1 to time 2 to time 3 to time 4. So 4 kind of periods of time, moments in time. And then we're going to interested to see how the populations at location A of light colored mice, location A of dark colored mice, location B of dark colored mice, and location B of light colored mice, how all those populations have or have not changed over time. So we're going to add 4 different series of data representing those 4 different population substrate combinations. So first of all, we're going to add a series, and this is going to be the mice at location A of light colored mice. And remember, this is the, let me cancel out of this for a minute. This is the light colored sandy substrate. And then over here is the dark colored lava flow substrate. Okay, just so that we all have that clear in our mind. Okay, so we're going to select our data. We're going to add a series in. And first of all, this is going to be this data that's in column B here. So it's going to be light colored mice on light colored substrate. So I'm going to write light substrate, and then I'm going to write light mice. And then I'm going to go down to my series value. And remember, Excel has this weird placeholder. So we have to delete that one in the brackets. And then we're going to highlight the data points, which are all these different times, at all these different times, the number of mouse populations. And we can just see from our table that it doesn't vary very much. Sometimes there's 10, sometimes there's 11, but it's a fairly constant number. So we'll say, okay, once we've highlighted that data. Then we're going to add another series of columns. This time it's going to be on that same light substrate, but this time dark colored mice. So we'll again write light substrate, and then we'll write dark mice, and then we'll highlight the number of mice that they have. And already from our table, we can see it doesn't vary a lot between 1 and 2, but relatively on that light substrate. The dark colored mice are not at a selective advantage, so they're not really dominating in the population. So, okay. Then one more, we're going to have a, this time the location B, which is the location that becomes that dark substrate. So we'll call it dark substrate in the series name area. Dark, the first, I guess the D column is light colored mice. And so we'll highlight that, okay. And then finally, it's this dark substrate, and then it's the dark mice. And then we'll highlight the data in column E. And then we can say, okay. So now we have our graph. I have this one is wrong. Edit, because I can see that I've done it wrong because I only have one yellow bar here. So I know something's wrong. So I'm going to go and edit, and I accidentally put the data in the title. I want the data down in the series area. Dark substrate, dark mice. I don't want an equal sign there. Okay, and then I'm highlighting that. Okay, now it should work. So now I should have 4 different periods in time, which represent the populations of light colored mice on substrate A, the light substrate, dark colored mice on that same substrate, light colored mice on the darker lava flow substrate, or light colored mice on the dark lava substrate, and dark colored mice on the dark lava substrate. And they should be all changing or not changing much over time. But right now, this graph just has a bunch of numbers. It's not well labeled. So somebody who didn't make the graph, or even someone who did make the graph, might have a hard time making sense of what the graph's showing us. So we have to add labels, legends, axes labels to it. So the first thing that we'll do is we'll label this 1, 2, 3, 4, and we'll show that these represent these different periods in time. And so we can do that by right-clicking on the data again, going back to select data. And here in a bar graph, right, which is different than in a XY scatterplot graph, we are comparing these different values to labels, different category labels that happen to represent time in this case. So we can edit that, and then we can highlight these 4 labels, time 1, time 2, time 3, time 4. and then they'll be added to the bottom. So now we can see what these different groups of columns represent. Over here, do you remember what these represent? Hopefully in your mind, think about it for a minute. Those represent the number of mice in our sample. So we have to add axes labels here, add chart labels and legends. So remember, when you've clicked on the graph, you should be able to click on this plus sign to add things to your graph. Remember, if you're clicked outside your graph, you won't see that option. So you need to click on your graph. You'll be able to see this plus sign here, or you'll be able to hit this design area and add chart elements. But we'll just do the quick and dirty way, which is hit this plus sign. We want to add axes titles. We want to add a chart title. And then we also want to add a legend, which is going to tell us what these different colors represent. So we can interpret what this means. So our chart title, this is the title of the chart is meant to represent something that tell somebody what the graph is meant to educate us about. So we want to see, this is the change to mice populations over time on different substrates, right? Different ground colored material. Let's get that out of there. Okay, so I have a bunch of capital and uncapital letters. So you could have a slightly different title, but something to that effect. Okay, then we want to label our axes. Our axes are already pretty well labeled down here, but we'll just say that this is time. And then we'll come over here and hopefully you know that this is the number of mice in our sample. And then we can do a little pound sign or hashtag to represent that that's just a count, a number of individuals. Okay, so now we can see that A, the number of light mice in the light substrate remain fairly even. They're not exactly the same, but they're fairly even. B, or the orange, which represents the light substrate, where the dark mice population is occurring, we can see that that's fairly small. It's not advantageous to have a dark coat if you're on a light sandy substrate. But we can see that there is more significant changes in the gray population, which is going down over time. And so that represents the light colored mice on the dark substrate. So as the environment changes and the and the lava flow makes the ground dark, all of a sudden having a light fur coat is really to your disadvantage. So you're experiencing much more severe predation. You're not able to survive and reproduce nearly as well. And so that population is really taking a dive here across these 4 time periods. And then the yellow, which represents the population of dark mice on this dark substrate, we can see all of a sudden if there's a mutation that leads to a darker coat, that's a real evolutionary advantage. So nature is going to be selecting for survival and procreation, reproduction of those mice with a dark coat. And so their population is going to rise significantly during that time. Okay, there's your graph. So make sure you save it and then upload it as part of the quiz. All right,